Hello, welcome to Poppin Predictions, where we believe movies aren't over at the end, but are meant to be continued. You're here with Andy and Marqueze, where we ponder what happens in a story once the credits begin to roll. Marqueze, what are we talking about today?
Hey Andy, so on today's episode we will be reviewing the movie Inside Out. Inside Out is a 2015 American computer animated comedy film that follows Riley, a young girl who is uprooted and moved to the Midwest when her family starts a new job in San Francisco. Her emotions, joy, fear, anger, and disgust, are conflicted on how to best navigate a new city, house, and school. And as always, spoilers ahead. Alright, so Andy, can you give us a quick description of this movie?
Yeah, so I think the quickest way to break this movie down is that this movie is about how an 11-year-old girl kind of achieves emotional maturity and realizes that it's okay to be sad sometimes. And it's not necessarily just her, it's her emotions within her head. So she has, joy. Joy is her very first emotion. And then she gets 4 other ones. She has anger, disgust, sadness, and fear.
I forgot sadness. Wow, that's sad.
Wait, what?
Forgot sadness in the intro. I didn't mention sadness. I was like, her emotions, joy, fear, anger, and disgust.
Oh my gosh,
sadness is like the most important one, right?
That's how she learns how to manage emotions. Oh my goodness.
That's her first depression hits.
Oh my gosh. Her first depression hits is when, she moves to San Francisco from Minnesota. The second one is being left out of the intro from our podcast.
That's the sequel. That's how the sequel starts.
Oh, okay. Podcast over. Well, everyone have a good week. No. So, so you learn more about your subconscious because, obviously whatever Pixar makes is based off of true stories. And so you learn that inside your head, you have these complex emotions. And you also have these core memories. And so what ends up happening is sadness releases the core elements, the core memories, and joy gets sucked into a tube with the core memories along with sadness, and it's their journey back to headquarters, which I think is a really funny way of saying the brain, or maybe like the central nervous system, whatever. So it's basically about their journey back in. Joy, true to her name, always wants to be happy, always wants Riley to be happy. And doesn't truly understand the point of sadness. Like they're always at odds, and by it's mostly joy. Like sadness really doesn't have any problems with joy. It's usually joy that's just like, you don't belong here. So it's a story about Riley moving to San Francisco told through the emotions that she has, and that joy eventually realizes that sadness is necessary to establish emotional security, to be in touch with your emotions, and then help Riley kind of not necessarily conquer, but move on and adapt to her new living environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of my favorite things about this film, for those of you who have seen it, is when they're going through the memories, and like this film's kind of structured around these core memories, these core memories that are very influential to the way that Riley lives her life, the narrative she tells herself. It's like when I remember like there's one where she wins her hockey game, and her parents put her on their shoulders, and just things that really shaped who she was. And what I love about it so much is that the core memories aren't just like purely happy memories or sad memories or whatever, but that they're subjective. They're subjective to a point of view. Like there's a core memory that's originally a happy memory, but then once sadness touches it, it becomes a sad memory. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily even like realize just about, emotions and memories and like, just how the human mind works. And I thought they portrayed that incredibly well, just the sense that no specific memory is always happy or sad. It's really in like what angle you're viewing it from, your time of life, and then like what you've learned from it. And I've had that happen a lot throughout my life, and so I just thought it was really cool that they portrayed it.
Yeah, it's like, it's like that's how the saying goes, history is told by the winners and not the losers, sort of a thing, if you think about it. Because, like, when I think back at my memories, like, I sometimes forget certain details, but then I'll have a conversation with other people that were involved in a particular memory, and they remind me of things that, like, I might not have remembered. And it's like, wow, like, yeah, that actually happened. And so that's kind of what happens in this movie, is that, like, Joy recalls a very happy moment and only recalls the happy part of it. But then she shares the same exact experience with Sadness, and Sadness is like, yeah, like, this is what happened before that led to her being happy. And so it's interesting in a way, because it shows you what it's like to be a kid again. For if you're an adult watching this movie, it shows you what it's like to be a kid again. And maybe you might have been told to do things a certain way in order to feel happy, because no one wants to be sad at any time. Like, no one wants to be sad. And so this movie really kind of shows that it's okay to be sad. Like, going through sadness and depression and having those periods in your life where you have, like, your darkest moments, like, that's okay, because eventually hopefully you do get out of those a better person. And I think one of the moments that is not for me, at least, I don't think it's, like, super, like, highlighted, but it is an important scene, is when Riley is going to bed and her mom is, like, tucking her into sleep. And she basically, like, her mom tells her to be happy for her dad. And what this movie does really well, and in sometimes not so subtle, sometimes very subtle ways, is use of color to do their storytelling. So Joy wears, like, this, like, lime green yellowish dress, and whenever you see yellow, like, that's supposed to symbolize happy. Sadness is blue, so whenever you see blue, like, it's supposed to represent sadness and stuff like that. And there's a part at the end of the movie where Riley decides that she's going to run away from San Francisco to go back home, quote unquote, to Minnesota. And there's an absolute void of colors. She's just wearing black. And you see inside her brain. So for those who have seen, and for those who haven't seen it, like, there's, like, a central console that the emotions use to react to certain things that Riley does. And that console is lit up and has different colors, different buttons. And when Riley runs away and she, like, her outfit is entirely black and dark, like, it turns off, like, it starts to slowly fade to black. And I think that happens because Riley, like, at this point, Sadness is still not back in headquarters. So Riley literally lacks the ability to cry because Sadness is not there and Joy is not there. So, like, she is kind of, like, shut down because she doesn't have the emotion. She doesn't know how to process what she's going through. And it's not until Sadness and Joy comes back, and more so Sadness comes back and takes the reins, that Riley is able to process what she's doing. Like, she shouldn't be going on this bus back to Minnesota. She should be going back home to her parents and kind of going through. And I can definitely kind of understand what she's going through, because I moved from New York to Florida around the same age that Riley had moved from Minnesota to San Francisco. So I can understand, like, there's probably, like, a bit of a culture shock. You're trying to make the best of things, but it's not necessarily, like, it's not what you want, and you're told that you have to be happy for other people. And so this was, like, the journey for her to kind of process her move the best she can as a little kid.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to, like, never have to go through that, like, the cross country move or anything like that. I did move schools once, from, I think, 5th grade to 6th grade, but other than that, I went to the same school from 6th grade to, senior year of high school. And so I was very fortunate to be able to have, long-term friends during that time period. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, like, and that's another thing too, is when people move away, it actually happens to a lot of college students. It's very popular to happen to college students. But when you move away or are taken out of your comfort zone and into a new place where everything's new, you're reacting to different situations or whatever, that could be a time for mental health things to spark up.
Yes.
And like I said, it's really popular around college students because obviously that's the first time a lot of people are leaving home. And then all of a sudden they have all these like mental health issues they never knew they had that were just kind of lying dormant. And that was the spark that was needed. And so we don't see it that until Riley moves away to San Francisco with her family, that's when all of a sudden depression starts kind of taking the spotlight. And I didn't notice to watching it this second or maybe third time around. Can't remember if this was my second or third time, but to watching it around this time recently, that when depression first goes and like starts touching memories and touching core memories, Joy's like, "What are you doing?" And depression's like, "I can't help it. Like I'm just like, I'm not trying to do this. It's just I can't stop touching the memory, And I noticed like, oh, I was like, okay. I was like, they really are showing like, I mean, it never says that like Riley's depressed or anything like that, but they are showing like kind of like how that starts of like certain emotions just kind of start to take control, they start to take the spotlight.
Something that I'm so glad you mentioned that, because like they like on top of using like color to do storytelling, like they also use like subtle metaphors. So like I don't know if you thought about this, but like when they are like, this is towards the beginning of the movie, like not the very beginning, but definitely towards the beginning of the movie, where like Riley is going through the house and she's like, I hate this place. Like this place sucks. Like Joy pushes Sadness to the corner and draws a circle and is like, you cannot leave the circle. And to me, that means like something that we do, or at least I do. It's not healthy, but like it's almost like you're putting your sadness and your emotions like in the back of your mind, and so like you're keeping them trapped and bottled up, and not processing what you're going through. And I think that this movie kind of highlights how toxic positivity can really ruin someone, and actually is like the detriment to someone's mental health, because you see it a lot with Riley, but you also see it a lot with the other emotions and other characters. I mean, I think something that kind of helps you see that sadness is really important is the scene with Bing Bong, and Bing Bong is kind of processing like how he's kind of in the middle for like Bing Bong's the imaginary friends for Riley, and like he's kind of in that gray area where like he doesn't want to be forgotten, but he also doesn't have much use for Riley now that she's almost a teenager. And so sadness helps Bing Bong process kind of the sad memories, and that's kind of where you start seeing, okay, sadness is supposed to be like the unsung hero of this movie. Not to say that there's like any like real villain. I mean, maybe you could classify Joy as the real villain if you wanted to go down that
you're going there.
You could make the argument there. I don't think I mean, we've done a lot of these movies where like there's like a true villain. I don't think there's like a true villain, because like I don't think Joy is doing this with malintent or anything. I think that Joy, it's almost, I remember when we watched this movie before the podcast, like I was like, this movie is basically Toy Story because like Woody was Andy's favorite toy, and Joy was Riley's first emotion. And then out of nowhere, these other emotions are here taking charge, trying to be the lead, and sadness is like now, like I wouldn't say Riley's favorite toy, but like sadness is showing that she needs to be a part of Riley's life, and that she needs to help Riley process these difficult conversations. And you see that Joy fully realizes that sadness is critical when she's trapped in the pit of like that pit where like they forget the memories, and she has to, like Bing Bong and her have to try to escape together.
Uh-huh.
Like she realizes that like she's sad. Like Joy for the first time feels sad that she's trapped. She's forgotten. She feels like she's going to lose and she's not going to be able to help Riley through moving through San Francisco. And once she realizes and processes that emotion, she is able to work with Bing Bong to escape the pit of despair and accomplish her goals of getting back to headquarters and helping Riley.
Yeah, no, this is a great film. Like this is a really great film. There's a lot that could be said about it, but obviously we just recommend going and watching it. But Andy, so how do you see this continuing from where it ends off? Actually, do you want to start with how it ends off and then see how we want to continue it?
Yeah. So how it ends up, like I was kind of talking about earlier, Riley is she goes on a bus and she's trying to run away from San Francisco back to Minnesota. Joy and Sadness make it back to headquarters, which the way that Joy is able to do it is really hilarious because in the beginning of the movie, when they get lost inside the mine and they're first starting their journey back to headquarters, you see that Riley has like a Canadian crush that she just has imaginary. So like she makes like a whole bunch of copies of him and then uses him as like, I don't even know, like she makes like 1 million copies and then falls with the 1 million copies onto a trampoline, grabs Sadness, and then gets to headquarters. And like I was saying before, like Riley's like emotions are shutting down. So everything's turning black inside her brain. And then Sadness goes up to the center console and removes the light bulb that is the idea of her running away from home. And that kind of releases everything. And while this is and after that happens, Riley kind of wakes up. She was almost like in a trance. So she like wakes up and she's like, I need to get off this bus. I need to go home. She gets home and she opens up to her parents. And I think that that's so important that she opens up to her parents and she tells them exactly what she was going through. And then a new core memory that is both yellow and blue. So both joy and happiness comes as she's embracing her parents and kind of overcoming her I don't know if it's depression or just her experience of moving to San Francisco. And then you see that there's a new console that comes into place, and there's one that it has a puberty button that nobody knows how to pronounce it. And you kind of see Riley coming back to herself. She gets back into hockey. She forms a new stronger relationship with her parents, and they kind of process the move to San Francisco. And it kind of has that happy ending of like, sadness, kind of joy, realizing that sadness is essential to Riley's development and all of the emotions coming together and kind of seeing some sort of emotional maturity. Riley's living a really great life in San Francisco now, and it kind of ends off there.
Yeah. But specifically when you're talking about the new console and there being a puberty button, and like, and like all the emotions are like, oh my gosh, there's so many new buttons. Anger is like, oh my gosh, there's so many new curse words, things of that nature. And so they're obviously showing Riley about to go, into puberty and become, high school or whatever. And I imagine that if there's going to be a part 2 and Riley's a teenager, the emotions must be going everywhere.
Yes.
The emotions must be going everywhere. And I don't know, like maybe Joy was in charge when she was a kid, but as a teenager, who knows? Like she could be a very depressed teenager, it could be sadness, or she could be anger.
I'm going to blow your mind here. I'm going to blow your mind here, Marquise. So one of the things I think that anyone who watches Disney /Pixar movies know that like they love to drop Easter eggs in their movies. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if you paid attention to
Probably
this, but Bing Bong's little flower pin that he wore had all the colors of the rainbow. So like all of the colors that like joy, like had all of the colors of the emotions, but there were also some emotions that weren't there in the movie that he had on his pin. And so I think that that's kind of a nudge to say that there might be new emotions that they haven't even discovered yet. And so I think when she goes through puberty, I think that you see these new emotions come into play. I don't know what they would be,
Love,
but I think
that's the first one that's coming off
yeah,
the top of
probably.
my head. Love, romance is definitely going to be one as a teenager.
Oh my gosh. Imagine if they go by lust instead.
They're like 7 deadly sins.
No! They all of the emotions get new names. They're all 7 deadly sins.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. No, but I think that that when she goes through puberty, she develops 2 new emotions that I think are temporary emotions because you see in the adults when they're adults, like her dad and her mom have the same emotions as Riley does. So these new emotions are kind of there to help her become an adult. It also could kind of be a story of how Riley goes to college.
They could do high school or college.
It came out in 2015, which is now 6 years ago.
Oh yeah. Freshman year Riley.
You could make the argument. I mean, she'd be really young, but you could also just like push it back. I mean, you could just make it so she goes into college. And this is where the Toy Story Inside Out crossover movie happens, where Riley dates Andy in college.
Yeah. You're wild and Allie.
Marquise is like, get out of here, Andy. You're done.
What are we doing to do this cross prediction?
I mean, Riley does look like Andy's mom. I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh.
You know that psychology, you look for someone that's like your parent.
I'm dead right now. But yeah, I don't know. Like I imagine seeing the difficulty she had when she got to San Francisco, and it kind of ended on a more happy note. But one of the scenes, I don't think you mentioned that right before it ends, is her going out to the hockey rink and she bumps into a boy, and the boy you see the emotions inside the boy's head, and it's like, girl, what do we do? It's a girl. What do we do? It's a girl, and they're just freaking out, and it's great. And as she like goes into the rink, he turns back and gives like a second look to her, and she gives a second look to him, and I'm like, yo, they're definitely gonna be a couple. And so, but I don't know. I see obviously just for people and everything that all the emotions kind of start, because in this story was about finding the core like really accepting sadness. That's what the story was. It's like accepting this emotion. Even though like the very first little bit of it was Joy just trying to maintain control. Oh, I mean, I guess it was trying to maintain control the whole time, but it was more about going from maintaining control to accepting sadness. I think if there was a sequel, it would definitely be like a changing of the guard of Joy is no longer in control. And I mean, with puberty, I'm thinking either anger, sadness, or romance. Like I could easily see a new emotion, one of the new emotions being love or something like that, love or romance. And that emotion saying, hey, we got it from here. Like we're gonna take control, and Riley's gonna fall in love with some boy in her class, maybe, or girl, whoever. But Riley's gonna fall in love with some person in her class. And I think that love or whatever is going to take control, and all of a sudden Riley's going to start acting different, doing things she never did, blah, 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 and the other emotions are going to like try to fight back or do something about it. Like, I don't know.
Okay, we were joking about it being like Toy Story, but you basically just wanted to be Toy Story.
Yeah,
I'm just calling you out. I'm just calling you out here. You just basically wanted to be Toy Story.
It doesn't have to be Andy, but it can be anyone else.
The new emotions coming into place, taking over. No, I'm messing. I think that's good. How do you see it playing? No, I could see that. I agree with you. I think that's what happens. I think a new emotion comes into play. I think where I disagree is that I think this movie, I think this movie was where Joy realizes that she can't be the alpha emotion all the time. Like, she learns that sadness, that at times sadness needs to take the reins, that anger and the other ones need to take the reins. So I think that this is what that movie is that you're saying. Like, I think that she accepts that and she agrees with it at this point. That, like, yeah, the other emotions need to take over so that Riley can be stable and not go off the rails. But I do agree that once the puberty button lights up, which I think is what happens, I think it's set up to, like, I really see that scene happening where, like, the light pops up on the button and they're like, what do we do? What do we do? And then they press the button and then, like, everything starts to change.
And then that's when the new emotions come. That has to be when the new emotions come when you press the button.
Yes, 100%. 100%. That's when the new emotions come into play.
I love it.
And so that's when that story happens. And then obviously Inside Out 3 would be when she goes to college, much like Toy Story 3.
Oh my God. Why are you doing this to me, dog?
To just show you the similarity that it takes place in the same universe.
Yeah. What if we just had like a Disney mashup of like they just picked like 5 of the most popular films from the last year, or not last year, the last like decade or two, and just like some mashup story that'd just be like Inside Out, Zootopia, Toy Story.
Okay, here's my 5 mashup movies. You got Inside Out. You got Toy Story, and then I'm going to do a curveball and do Lion King.
Oh my goodness, yo. No. Riley's going to adopt Simba. Let's get it started.
Where are we going?
I don't know where this is going, but I like it. So
this is the prediction here, is that the 5 Pixar movies that were, and then Zootopia happens. And
Riley adopts Simba, and then, yeah, I don't know where to go.
This is actually it's actually the story of how Zootopia started. It's like a Planet of the Apes sort of tale, but told by Pixar, where like mankind has the world, and then Riley adopts Simba, realizes that she can't do it, and then Simba gains intelligence and takes over the world.
Oh my goodness! Some
and then
AI
Zootopia starts. That's how it really happened.
That's the true sequel. If anyone told you anything else, that's really Inside Out 2. That's how it's gonna end.
Jesus Christ. So, real prediction is that Riley goes through puberty, there's new emotions, and help her process it.
You're dying right now, dog.
I'm just like, we gotta get back on track here.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Side note, completely, this isn't like a prediction, but just
sure.
part of the movie. My favorite scenes, I think by far all the funniest scenes had to do with anger. Like every time Anger went and like lashed out, it was absolutely hilarious.
I mean, I love me some Lewis Black. Like he's awesome.
That, or there's a scene where, it's all kind of actually happens at the same scene. The family's at the dinner table, mom, dad, and Riley, and the mom asked Riley how school was. And, Riley's like, it's fine, I guess, whatever. Gives her like a side eye. And that's the first time you get to peer inside the mom's head. And it's all of these like classically looking moms. They look like librarians, like they just have their glasses on, the sweaters. And I'm like, all right, she's giving us a little bit of attitude. Let's press a little deeper and see. And it's just like, it's so funny of like everyone in her head is like just like a classic suburban mom, or whatever.
I think what kind of surprises me, I think that you brought up something that I am curious about, is that all of the mom's emotions look the same. Like they all have, like, they're the different colors, of course, but like they all look different. Like they all, they all have different colors, but they all look the same. The dad's emotions, they all have the mustache, but they all look the same. Riley's emotions, like you have like they're all over the place. Like they just don't have any sort of unique qualities. So maybe it's when puberty happens that they all sort of start merging, not like merging into one, but like becoming more like Riley.
It would have to be post-puberty, I imagine.
Yeah.
Puberty is just too chaotic.
And I think that that's what it's all about. Like, it's about like when you're a kid, like your emotions are all over the place. It's chaotic. You don't know how to process them. And then when you go through puberty, like, you know, that's when you get the extremes. Mm-hmm. For some cases, you go through extremes and then you kind of like break down and then get rebuilt, mm-hmm. you know, into an adult. Some people take longer than others, you know, but it's fine.
Yeah. And this is, I want to mention also, like, this is a movie that definitely pulls on like your heartstrings. That's, I mean, obviously you could probably tell by now if you haven't seen it, but this movie is like definitely has sad parts of pulling your heartstrings. Like, I mean, it definitely hits your emotions. It'd be kind of sad if it didn't, to be honest. But like, it definitely hits your emotions, and like, it's really good. And I mean, I thought it was fairly entertaining overall.
Yeah.
Andy, would you recommend this movie to people?
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely recommend this movie to other people. I think if we look at our rating scale from small, medium, large, and big bucket, for me, this is a large. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed this movie. I think that it has some really strong storytelling. The plot was solid, but obviously, because I'm able to draw parallels between another Pixar movie, it's not super original because they're trying to get back home to headquarters, much like the toys were in Toy Story. Uh-huh. But I think that, like, similar to Zootopia, and I'm obviously comparing it to like doing some comparisons to Zootopia because it's another Pixar film. Mm-hmm. Like, they have like a strong message that like is really good for their viewers to kind of talk about. And again, like, I don't know if this would be a good, I mean, this probably is a good movie to like help kids talk about their emotions. But I know that maybe you might be thinking, and if you're not thinking, then maybe someone else might be thinking, like, how come he gave Zootopia an extra large and Inside Out a large? And I think that, or Big Bucket, sorry. And I think that it's just, for me, like, Zootopia was just so kind of like the topics that Zootopia covered was just so original, mm-hmm. and I don't think has been done in a kids movie format. That for me, like, Inside Out, like, was really good. I have no problem recommending it, and it does have really strong themes that need to be talked about, especially with kids. But it doesn't just meet. It does, to me, it doesn't meet the same as Zootopia did. What about you, Marquise?
That's fair. No, yeah, I mean, so first of all, I would recommend this film. I thought it was a good film. I think a lot of people enjoy it. But I also would say, it's not as good as Utopia to me. It's a great topic they discuss. They do it well, I think, but it's not as entertaining the whole way through. Where I would say Zootopia, I was pretty entertained the entire
I agree.
time. I was entertained the entirety of the time. I felt like there were more funny moments too. Like, there were more jokes I felt in Zootopia.
Yeah.
And there was a lot more adult jokes too. Not in like adult humor, obviously, but more so just like things.
That's what Inside Out 2 is about. That's where you get those. And kill.
I'm not gonna go everywhere I thought. But,
there goes your train of thought, just like the movie.
I'm dead. But yeah, I oh my god, my train of thought is actually gone.
Yes, just like the movie.
No, yeah, in Zootopia, there's a lot of like subtle like jokes or hints, you know, of like things you would only recognize if you're adult and have like, you know, been through life or whatever. And so I felt Zootopia was a lot more funnier for like an adult. You know, there's just so many little things that are hilarious to you. Like, oh my gosh, they, you know, actually like kind of portrayed this. Whereas this movie, I didn't feel like it had enough adult humor to keep me like entertained a second or third time around, but you know, I still think it's really strong because of like how well kind of conveys, you know, just dealing with your emotions, you know, and like it's okay to feel sad sometimes, it's okay to feel angry at times, you know, you don't have to always be happy. Like your emotions, you have all your emotions there for reasons, you know. And so I would give it, I'm gonna give it a large just because I think the topic it discusses, it's really good, but it's not Pixar's best film, but it's solid.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah,
solid.
it's gonna also get a large bucket from me.
Perfect. That's awesome. So yeah, what did you all think about our continuation for Inside Out? Did you agree with us? Do you think that we're going down a dangerous rabbit hole comparing it to Toy Story? Please be sure to subscribe to this wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at PopandPredict and on Instagram at PopandPredictions.pop to let us know your thoughts and how we should, how you think the movie should continue. You know, as always, have a good time. Peace out.
All right, y'all. Have a good one. 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 All right, y'all. Have a